I'm up to bat first, so I'll begin that now. I want to start by talking a little bit about the Bonneville Shoreline Trail Advancement Act. This is S4215, and I'm going to raise this with Mr. French. As I mentioned, Mr. French, in my opening statement, the purpose of this particular bill is to complete and also expand the use of the Bonneville Shoreline Trail, or BST. The BST is a non-federal mixed-use trail, and most of it runs along urban development in Salt Lake County, inside of 4 wilderness areas. The bill would subtract about 20 parcels that together total 344.16 acres from wilderness in the Uinta-Wasatch-Cache National Forest areas. About 19.06 acres in the Mount Naomi Wilderness, approximately 197.4 acres in the Mount Olympus Wilderness area, 9.8 acres in the Twin Peaks Wilderness area, and 107.9 acres in the Lone Peak Wilderness area. The bill also would add the same amount of land as one contiguous parcel to the existing Mount Olympus Wilderness area to create a one-to-one swap. These lands were selected through research and discussion among local trail supporters and conservationists. And I'd like to ask unanimous consent that a written statement from BST trail advocates endorsing S4215 be added to the hearing from the record, and those who will be admitted into the record without objection. Mr. French, you may be aware that the parcel of land being designated as wilderness rests miles away from the Salt Lake Valley, while the parcels being removed are backed right up against urban development and are currently impeding trail traffic. Do you feel this swap would help the lands under the wilderness designation to better match the Wilderness Act's description of wilderness as an area where the earth and its community of life are untrammeled by man, where man himself is a visitor who does not remain?
Yes, I think that if you look at consolidating that land and away from those edges, it makes for a more consistent management and more consistent with the Wilderness Act.
Did the Forest Service participate in this as in local stakeholder discussions about this proposal and the proposed no net loss of wilderness?
Yeah, the local forest worked with the proponents to help develop some of the proposals in the maps.
Okay. I also want to ask you about the Human-Powered Travel in Wilderness Areas Act, S1695. So another approach to solving some of the access issues at BST is to ease the nationwide ban on bicycles inside of wilderness. This bill that I introduced, S1695, the Human-Powered Travel in Wilderness Areas Act, would amend the Wilderness Act of 1964 to authorize local land managers to determine on a case-by-case basis where and whether to allow mountain bikes to access wilderness. I'd like to thank you, Mr. French, and also you, Mr. Nedd, and your respective departments and agencies for your support of this bill. Now, I've heard some concerns that the bill, according to some, would authorize new roads in wilderness. Mr. Nedd, can you confirm that my bill would not allow for new roads?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is my understanding. The bill would allow just for the existing, but existing pattern road would not allow for use of new roads.
And would the department seek public input before deciding on the suitability of a trail for other types of motorized travel?
Well, my understanding, there's 2 years for the federal manager at the local level, so that process would include seeking input from stakeholders.
Okay. Mr. French, how prominent has mountain biking become on National Forest System lands compared to the 1960s when logging was a more dominant use?
It's a tremendous use. 3 out of every 4 miles of trail right now that we have, it's like 120,000 miles, currently are open to mountain biking, and we see increased use year after year. It's a dominant expanding use.
Now, is the ban on mountain bikes contained in directed by the Wilderness Act? And if it's not, could the Forest Service change its regulations on bicycles if it decided to do so?
Our advice and interpretation from our attorneys is that the Wilderness Act specifically calls out mechanized, not allowing mechanized, and there is some court cases that support that, and that was the change in our regulations in the 80s that created that.
The original understanding at the time the Wilderness Act was enacted in 1964 did not encompass bicycles. Is that correct?
Sir, I'd have to get back with you. I know the language in 1964 specifically called out not using mechanized transportation.
Okay. See, my time's expired.